Right then folks, Jacob here. Today we're going to be doing an overview of all three variants of the Crusader Industries Starlifter. Those of course being the C2, M2 and A2, of which are the cargo and vehicle transport ships and gunship boats alike. There are a decent chunk of people excited for these from what I've seen in my own comments, so here it is, let's get cracking. Before we do, I always miss things out on overviews. If you shed any further light on this video, I'll pin your comment. As always, see the chapters for whatever you are interested in. I do ramble, so these may not be entirely accurate, with my own added speculation and theories as always. Let's not forget to sub up to keep up with the content. Much like the Mercury Star Runner, you can't typically get your hands on any of the Starlifters. You generally need to wait for the various annual sales, i.e. the IAE, or the Invictus Week. Concierge game packages are an option. Problem is the C2 is the only one you can get from the Convoy pack, the rest being in the Legatus pack, and well, we all know how much that costs. Another option of course being the Grey Market. The ideal option being the fast approaching annual sale in November, the IAE, the Intergalactic Aero Expo, something or other. The Starlifter is likely to be the Crusader Industries' second entry into the verse, following the MSR of course. The Starlifter is very much a bigger brother to the MSR, although with three separate roles for each variant. There is of course the C2, which is of course the cargo hauler. This is the one that will hopefully be here in 3.12. Then there is the M2, which is the vehicle hauler, and lastly the A2, which is the gunship cum bomber. The lineup here is interesting. To me, on first glance, the C2 and M2 may as well be a single ship in themselves, although the M2 would seem to have advantages in the likes of hauling vehicles. However, according to the brochure, it is still equal to the C2 in this regard because it literally says it will haul the same amount of vehicles. Thus far, I don't see much of a reason for the M2 in this regard. There are other minor advantages that the M2 has over the C2, which we'll touch on later. It does still have cargo space equal to the Carrack at the end of the day, so it's not really that much of a loss on that front. On first glance, looking at the concept images regarding the A2, it would seem this is just to be an in-atmosphere bomber, of which I'm slightly questioning its out-of-atmosphere general capabilities. For example, the A2 has bombs. These will drop out of the bottom of the ship, hit the ground due to gravity. This just isn't going to work out of atmosphere, unless you get super up close and personal. However, these are categorized as missiles on the RSI site, so perhaps there is some propulsion behind these bombs. Who knows? Having looked into it further, these are just unguided bombs, so it would check out that you can literally just sort of aim the ship and then let go of the bombs, maybe. We'll see. The appearance of the Starlifter does remind me of Concorde, honestly, to an extent, with the front cockpit bridge kind of area and how the Concorde nose kind of is and stuff. And also the general appearance of the wings, like taking up the full length of the ship almost. So there is definitely some similarities in that regard. And with that in mind, and what I mentioned regarding the bombs, it would perhaps indicate this series of ships are more for a in atmosphere rather than out. With that in mind, of course, they do indeed have VTOL visible from the image, this image in particular. I'm confident, of course, much like with the other in-atmosphere ships, such as the M50, they will perform relatively well out of atmosphere. From how I see it, the C2 will be the new king of trading with its 50 SCU bump over the Caterpillar, taking it off of its first place podium position. It's nice to see that the C2 could potentially be easier to fly in atmosphere, not that the Caterpillar already isn't. To truly make the C2 king, it would need a medical bed, and to me, the MSR has far more than it should have, and so I'd rather not see the Starlifters be spoiled by having everything. The interior living spaces of the Starlifters are exactly the same from a functionality perspective in regards to the amount of beds that they have, the toilets, showers, etc. However, these only accommodate the main crew, of which include the pilot, co-pilot, and a dedicated gunner. However, the A2 has additional remote turrets, and therefore remote seats, for the vast array of remote turrets that it has, meaning that they'll have to sleep in the Nova tanks or blisters in the cargo bay, or even just put a few sleeping bags in this area in the middle. You know, it might be warmer on top of those areas, who knows. Moving on to the components, there are an absolute shed load of differences between all variants here, so bear with me on this. All variants have a single medium radar, 2 medium fuel intakes, fuel tanks, a single large quantum drive and jump drive, and 2 medium quantum fuel tanks, and lastly 2 large shield generators. As to the differences in components, for the medium computers, the A2 has a second medium computer over the other two which just have the one. The A2 also features a second large power plant over the other two just having the one. The A2 features 2 large coolers, the M2 features a single large cooler, and the C2 features 2 medium coolers. I was concerned about this initially for the C2 trying to cope with just 2 medium coolers. Again, there has to be disadvantages on this ship as a cargo hauler, and this might just be that disadvantage. It may well struggle trying to defend itself while the shields are under strain, as an example. Its competitors like the Cat and the Carrack feature 2 large coolers like the A2, and are ultimately designed to handle themselves in a fight somewhat. Additionally, it's interesting to see the variation in how the coolers are different for each variant, and it makes sense in regards to the roles in which each of the Starlifters fits into. As for the thrusters, all 3 Starlifters feature the same thruster loadout of 4 VTOL thrusters, 2 retro thrusters, and 4 main thrusters, and lastly the 12 fixed maneuvering thrusters. This all makes sense given that it's all practically the same chassis for all 3 Starlifters. However, the armour on the M2 and A2 is heavy armour, making it a heavy ship, so perhaps maybe some more would be required, or it would perhaps be somewhat slower in atmosphere. Moving on to weapons, these are very different between the 3 Starlifters, more so the A2 for obvious reasons. Anyway, the C2 has 2 size 4 ballistic cannons, with 1 per mount, and this is the weapon that the pilot would control. Additionally, 2 size 3 turrets, with 2 per mount, and a total of 2 mounts. So these are the remote turrets that are controlled by the dedicated gunner, or the co-pilot, one of the two, probably the dedicated gunner. The M2 is literally exactly the same, except it has 3 mounts rather than 2, so that dedicated gunner is going to have an extra turret to man, it would seem. The third one being at the front of the ship underneath. It's unspecified on the RSI site as to whether these are remote or manned. According to the original ship shape episode and the brochure, these are remote turrets. That is the case with all Starlifter variants, but as always, take that with a grain of salt because that might not be the case in the end. Moving on to the A2, the weapons here are quite a mouthful, so bear with me on this one. Regarding the size 12 bombs, you have 4 racks, of which a total of 10 per rack. The whole bomb scenario with the A2 is all in place of the rear cargo ramps, so it would seem you ain't getting vehicles in the A2, but there is a smaller lift somewhere in the centre of the cargo bay, according to the Q&A. But we'll have to see, of course, in regards to the whole how the A2 has vehicles in it, but we'll see. Regarding the size 3 bombs, there are a total of 60 altogether, split between an unknown number of racks. I'm just going to assume because there's 4 racks for the other lot, there must be 4 racks for this one, meaning that there's going to be 15 per rack, and because 4 times 15 makes sense. So yeah. Over the M2, the A2 basically gains a whole load of side turrets, those being the 2 size 5 single mounted ballistic cannons, and another 2 size 4 ballistic gatlings with 2 per mount. These again are all remote turrets. The remote turrets being in this particular room. This same room looks to be the same room from the concept images of the C2, so it would seem that the A2 has a bunch of remote turret seats in this same room, so that's fine, whatever. As a side note, this same room would appear to be where the components and such are stored, again, from what CIG has shown us. So there is a floor plan from when the Starlifter was in its white box phase. However, this image is in the subscriber vault, which I don't believe I can put in this video as of this moment. However, I'm sure we all know the general layout. It basically goes bridge, escape pods. We don't have any images of the escape pods, I don't think, unless I find some. Then this room, where the A2 has its remote turrets and stuff, and the rest of the ships is just blank. Then there's a whole bunch of rooms bolted onto the side of this room, like habitation and such. There is an engine room above the cargo room because that's where the engines are, so that's where the engine room is. It's easy enough to find the floor plan with the powers of the interwebs anyway, so just go get Googling. In summary, I believe the Starlifters are in a decent place, generally speaking. The C2 is a decent competitor to the Caterpillar. The Cat does have marginally more shields in the way of the 2 additional small shield generators, at least according to the RSI site, which is incorrect. In-game, it says the cat has just a large shield generator. But anyway, the two large shield generators may be reasonable for the A2, but I wouldn't say the same for the C2 and the M2. More so the C2, of course, given that its aim is a hauler, so it should be vulnerable to an extent. It is vulnerable in the way that it has reduced cooling, but it doesn't need those extra shield generators, and not to mention they're just going to get strained all the time, and then you're not going to be able to fire your weapons. So at the same time, I wouldn't like to see the C2 be the be-all and end-all trader, at least until the Hull series or the Merchantman or the Privateer are a thing. The Star Runner is already going to be a mid-level be-all and end-all as it is, and I personally wouldn't want to see the C2 to fall into that same hole. So wouldn't mind seeing the shields nerfed, maybe give it like 4 mediums or something, the M2 5 mediums, and the A2 leave that at 2 larges. That might be reasonable. And maybe that's balanced, but don't ask me about balance, I don't know anything. Moving on. My opinion still stands in that the C2 and M2 are basically the same. The brochure even states that it can store the same amount of vehicles, which to me makes the M2 worthless, other than it has increased armor and like an extra turret. I mean, it still seems pointless. I mean, why would you have that? I don't get that. If anyone can shed some light on what I'm possibly missing here, then please do, because I genuinely want to know. The M2 does still have cargo equal to that of the Carrack, and if you currently use a Carrack and you don't really care about the medical bed, then maybe the M2 is for you. To me though, the choice is simple. Have a C2 or an A2. What does concern me is if the A2 will be effective out of atmosphere, because if it isn't, then I'm not sure it'll be effective, period. I mean, sure, it'll still have its various size 4 and size 5 guns, but it would be like the Polaris not having its size 10 torps. The Polaris is a glass cannon, but without its torps, it would be, well, glass. The A2 could well be just glass out of atmosphere. However, when burst building comes out, it sure as hell will throw some sharp explosive glass on some homesteads for sure. So perhaps don't expect the A2 to be around until some iteration of homesteads are in the game. Just a theory, of course, but maybe it checks out. Who knows? They are, of course, doing some work towards homesteads, so given that the C2 is going to be out soon, maybe the A2 and M2 will follow. Who knows? All in all, I'm looking forward to the Starlifters, not just the C2, of course more so the C2 than the A2, or M2. The A2 will be a weapon for sure, of which I'm expecting to do bombing runs of homesteads and whatever else. The C2 will be the next strongest trader over the Cat, due to the additional 50 SEU in storage. Time will tell whether it'll be stronger, as some of course already prefer the Carrack over the Cat, just due to its medical bed. So that concludes the Starlifters. So what's next in line? I've mentioned a couple of times already I've been interested in doing a RTX 3080 comparison video to my 1080 Ti, specifically for Star Citizen. I've given up pretty much on trying to obtain a 3080 for now, and I'm more interested in what AMD has to offer, and I'll make a decision based on how well AMD play their cards, so to speak. Again, apologies for sounding like CIG in this regard of delaying things and all that not so good stuff. Additionally, apologies for the lack of uploads. I'd normally have added another video between this video and the previous. However, preparing for the future of the channel is proving difficult and challenging, of which is taking up my time right now. This is in regards to preparing for weekly specific content, which we'll find out later on. This will all be worthwhile in the end, I'm sure. Lastly, I want to congratulate Rolanders on winning the 25 RSI credit for the 250 subscriber milestone. I'll be in contact shortly if I haven't already in regards to that. The 500 subscriber milestone winners have been selected and will be revealed come the 750 subscriber mark. So I know you lot are skeptical about my channel given that I only have this amount of subscribers, but you've made it this far, so you're clearly interested, and this is how many of you actually subscribed. So do me a huge favour and subscribe. Do it. Do it. Do it! Also giveaways at 750 and 1,000 subs as long as you've commented on videos. Thank you ever so much for watching. Today's video sponsor is the like button for the glorious YouTube algorithm. That'll of course allow this channel to grow with your support. Obviously don't forget to comment or subscribe if you haven't already. If you aren't aware, I generally upload once or twice a week, so be sure to check back. My name is Jacob, thank you, and goodbye for now.